This original WSRE presentation is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
We dive into the world of cybersecurity with Dr. Eman El-Sheikh on this edition of Conversations. As the world becomes more dependent on computer systems and advanced technologies, the need to protect sensitive information becomes paramount. Dr. Eman El-Sheikh is an expert in the field of cybersecurity, as well as artificial intelligence and machine learning. Dr. El-Sheikh is director of the Center for Cybersecurity and a professor of computer science at the University of West Florida. She is also a visiting research scientist with the Institute for Human and Machine Cognition. We're glad to have Dr. Eman El-Sheikh on this edition of Conversations. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on, Jeff. It's a pleasure.
Let me ask you the big, broad question. When we say cybersecurity, what are we really talking about?
We are talking about protecting our resources, whether that's our computers, our devices, our data, our information, our networks. We're talking about being able to protect and defend them against attacks, against threats from internal sources as well as external sources.
And obviously this is becoming more and more important as we become more and more dependent upon all this technology. And of course, a lot of it's been in the news, you know, particularly surrounding the election and Russian hacking and all this sort of stuff. What do you make of all of that?
I think certainly it's, been in the news because it's so important. It affects everything from our personal daily lives, our health information, our financial information, our credit cards, all the way through to our assets, our national assets, our critical infrastructure, such as our elections, such as our national security. So I think it's important, and that's a sign that as a community we need to continue to be more involved, be more aware individually in terms of how cybersecurity relates to us, how we can be secure, starting with our own mobile devices, as well as kind of how as a community we can come together to continue to stay ahead of the game.
When you talk about personally being more secure with your mobile devices, what are things that people should be thinking about?
Certainly think about a lot of the things that we may not realize, all the default, for example, settings. Think about your phone. A lot of now youth have applications where they message each other. They are able to connect and locate each other. Well, if you think about if you leave your location on, that's an opportunity for somebody to be aware of where you're at right now, whether that's somebody who is looking at where children are hanging out, or whether that's, for example, you're going on vacation and you're posting pictures of somewhere else where now you're letting somebody know that you're away from your home. And so a lot of times it's just good, just like we check our safety at home on a regular basis, our fire alarms, our things like that. It's probably good to check your computers and your devices on a regular basis in terms of what are you doing to protect your privacy and your security, and just being aware of those things.
Have all of the various social media platforms made us more vulnerable?
They've certainly opened up a lot more opportunities to be vulnerable. We look at, for example, the explosion in the Internet of Things. Everything's connected. There's so many devices right now, from your TVs and your refrigerators to even toothbrushes that are connected or have the ability to be connected to the internet. And a lot of those, that's a gateway to the network. So whether that's you leave your device connected and now they can access your network through that connection. More importantly, now an attacker could access the rest of the internet. If that device is now connected on the internet, it then serves as a very unsecure gateway into the rest of the internet. And a lot of times when we've seen big outages or big attacks in the past, it's been through devices like that or situations like that.
Who are these people that are hacking into all of this? And I mean, they've obviously hacked into government stuff. They've hacked into major corporations. Who are they and where are they?
I think there's a variety of cases. So certainly there's the people who are just doing it for fun. So the people who are trying to see, well, what can I get into? What can I penetrate as a demonstration? And all the way through to external agents that are trying to attack the things that we have as a nation in terms of leadership, in terms of security, and it's everything in between. And as I mentioned, you could be the safest in terms of your own network, but it could be somebody internally who accidentally clicked on a link that they thought was valid, and that then caused a vulnerability, and then allowed people into your network and allowed them to access other things in the internet as a result.
Are the people in the United States, we hear about people being outside of the United States doing it, or just all over the world?
I think all over. It's certainly all over. And there's attacks and threats that go on a regular basis. So certainly this is something that's ongoing. Sometimes we don't find out about the attack or the breach that's happened until later. But there's people, who are kind of actively working on trying to get in. You look at foreign agencies that are trying to kind of get in and kind of get into sensitive information or data, all the way, including kind of people who are locally who are just kind of curious about what they could sell. And there's also, a market through the dark web in terms of information that you can get. For example, personal information. We look at the recent Equifax breach that's going to affect so many people in the sense that that's very critical information, and being able to access that along with other things is going to make it so much more important for companies overall, organizations to think about security, starting with kind of your own individual personnel.
Is my understanding that sometimes these characters will actually kind of get into the system and just kind of lay low for a while? So it's not like they'll get in on a Wednesday and immediately go to work and start doing things, but maybe just sit back for months and then start doing their nefarious activity?
Oh, absolutely. I think certainly you look at attacks, sometimes when we identify the breaches, you'll see that the first kind of incidents or the first gateway in happened months or years before that. And it's part of that is kind of part of the approach, the hackers or the attackers' approach in terms of getting in, figuring out, just like with your own house, right? Or people who monitor, you look at people who monitor the neighborhood and be able to come in and say, well, I'm going to come in at a time when I know that house is not very visible. I know that they're not usually home. There's nobody there around that time. It's the same on the internet, right? So they're going to monitor to see what's the easiest way in, where is the access point that I can get to that critical information, and once I get in, can I figure out in terms of being able to get the information that they want and get out without being detected.
Mm-hmm. How do you detect them? I mean, other than the fact that, they moved money out of your bank account or something like that. I mean, is there any way to detect that, hey, maybe somebody's in here messing around?
Well, that's certainly part of the programs that we teach is cyber defense. So, how do you kind of protect your networks and your computers and your information against whether that's securing your own computer system and your access to the network, whether that's being able to make sure that you've got backups for your data, so that, for example, ransomware has been such a big issue lately. So the more that you can have preventive measures in place in terms of making sure that you have backup data, that you have multi-steps along the way to get to your secure data, that if you have people who need to access that critical information, that you're training them on the procedures that are necessary to keep other people or external agents out from the data. So there's certainly a variety of things. And I think it's all part of the kind of global idea of becoming digital citizens, right? So you look at like right now where we are is very different from where we were as a community or society 10 years ago, and is very different from where we'll be in another 10 years. And I think that part of kind of becoming digital citizens and evolving into that will be kind of helping more in terms of building that culture of being secure. Right, we need, just like we learn about safety and health prevention as a community, as a global community, we need to individually and collectively together be thinking about how we can become secure citizens.
And how do we do that?
It starts, well, I'm an educator, so it starts with education, right? So certainly even from the lowest level, elementary school children now have access to computers, to laptops, to tablets. So it starts with them about just safe practices. Cyber hygiene is a very important topic. What is important to do if you're going to be using a computer? How do you spot something that may be unsafe? So I think it starts at that early age where, just like we teach our kids don't talk to strangers, things like that, we need to teach them about cyber hygiene and cyber safety, how to protect themselves when they're online or using a computer or device.
I'm curious about something. So hypothetically speaking, let's say someone infiltrates into something, a bank account or some private information, okay? And so they've gotten in. And then I guess they leave or whatever with the idea maybe I'll come back later or something like that. In the meantime, I change my password. Does that stop them, or have they still, is there a workaround?
I think it really depends in terms of, so the answers could be either way. It depends on how much access they've gained already. Sometimes an attacker really just wants that initial entryway. And what we've seen, for example, with latest breaches, with recent breaches, is that they'll get in through something that's unsecure, such as a television that's connected to the internet, a smart TV, and they're not necessarily going after that person's information. They're just looking at a portal into the rest of the internet or the rest of the kind of security protocols that they can bypass in order to get to the more sensitive information. So it really depends. And I think, you know, the first line of kind of prevention is making sure that we're aware of what are the common things to be looking for. For example, if you get an email, what do you do to kind of be vigilant about knowing what to click on, knowing what not to click on, knowing how can I test, how can I check if this is a legitimate, valid email versus a scam or something that's trying to get personal information. So I think that's the first line of defense. But I think certainly having people that across the organizations, whether it's government, whether it's private companies, healthcare, finance, banks, big organizations, having people who are trained and have expertise and ready to always be on the lookout for what looks like a vulnerability, what looks like a attack, what looks like, and so that's where human expertise is important, but that's also where tools such as AI and machine learning come in, because they can process data. We can use AI and machine learning to kind of look at data a lot more effectively than a human expert can.
Explain more about what AI is and how it works and machine learning. What are you talking about?
So this is something that I've been interested in for many years. In fact, that's kind of been my passion since I was an undergraduate. As an undergraduate, I remember one year needing an elective. I needed an elective to take my junior year, and I saw this course listed, artificial intelligence, and I said, that sounds interesting, and the time seemed reasonable. So I said, okay, I'll sign up for that class. And it really just was fascinating. So I think there and then is when I decided I wanted to continue to study AI and get a Ph.D. in AI and help inspire other students to get involved as well. It's really, if we think about it, it's a set of tools and methods that we use to solve problems, solve complex problems in ways that we can bring intelligence into the equation, both combining human intelligence and cognitive methods as well as kind of other strategies and algorithms. So you look at AI, for example, it's the study of how do we develop systems that can act intelligently. And that could take the form of mimicking how human experts behave in the field. That could also take the form of just trying to find the best solution for a problem using a variety of methods. You look at machine learning, it really helps. Certainly, we've seen so much about machine learning in the news recently, and more specifically deep learning. We've been able to accomplish so much that humans can't do using machine learning because it's about being able to process large amounts of data and being able to look for, to reason through that and analyze through that, to look for patterns, to look for solutions, to look for things that seem to be out of nature. And so it's perfect. It's a perfect fit as a strategy for cybersecurity, because you look at what we're seeing in cybersecurity is millions and billions of data going through the internet on a regular basis. And what you're trying to do is detect what looks like an abnormality, right? You're trying to find something that looks a little malicious, a little suspicious. How can we identify that? And if so, how can we react to it quickly? So certainly a combination of human expertise as well as some machine learning is going to help tremendously, in the sense that then we can actually look for patterns that we can kind of base on. We've seen this network traffic before. We've seen something that looks like this and it wasn't good. Well, we can remember that, and then as we see it next time, be ready to adapt to it. That's what machine learning helps facilitate. But it also helps build that knowledge base along the way. So just like we learn along the way and we incorporate that into our reasoning, a machine learning system can continue to build learning and knowledge along the way, so that it increases its knowledge of what's going on and responds more appropriately with time.
Now, is this going to be especially beneficial, not just in cybersecurity, but also like in medicine, as I understand it, as far as some of the things I've read, is going to increase our opportunities to be able to cure certain diseases and stuff because we'll be able to process so much more information. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. We're already seeing AI and machine learning benefit healthcare, benefit medicine. In fact, one of the early success stories for AI was an expert system that helped identify diseases, and they built it using knowledge that they got from expert physicians, and it was able to detect diseases and kind of identify appropriate remedy better than expert physicians. And so not only that showed the potential of what we could do, it also opened up to the idea of kind of using AI and machine learning as decision support tools, right? So to be able to aid experts wherever they are in identifying recommendations and strategies. So certainly in healthcare, it's made a huge difference. In finance, it's made a huge difference if you look at systems that, for example, predict where the stock market or economic growth is going to go. And certainly at the University of West Florida, we've done a lot to incorporate experiential learning experiences into our program so that students, in addition to the curricula and the courses that they gain, they get to participate in research projects as well as capstone experiences and internships that will give them experience in real-world problem solving in cybersecurity, in AI, in machine learning, and other topics.
Tell me about some of the other things that are going on at the university. So you actually have the Center for Cybersecurity at the University of West Florida. What is it? What does it do? What do you want to accomplish?
So the Center for Cybersecurity is the hub for cybersecurity activities, both on campus, connecting with the academic departments and other units with the goal of advancing cybersecurity, as well as connecting with our community to figure out what is needed to continue to help support our community, to grow cybersecurity in the area. So we really serve as the hub to kind of connect the pieces together, continue to lead the vision for advancing cybersecurity. And we've been working with the units on campus as well as our partners in government and industry and military assets that we have here in town to build the cyber coast. So we're on a mission to really highlight the huge potential and assets that Northwest Florida has, and to be able to bring all that together and really kind of grow our community even stronger.
Interesting. The cyber coast. So that would be something that would likely create a lot of economic activity, I would assume, or have the potential to, right? If we became sort of a place that people wanted to come to as far as working in that field.
Absolutely. I think we're very well on our way as a region and as a community. So certainly as the university, for starters, the University of West Florida is designated by the National Security Agency and the Department of Homeland Security as a National Center of Academic Excellence in cybersecurity education, and that's a huge honor. That's less than 5% of institutions across the country have that designation, so it's really the gold standard in terms of the quality of your program, the quality of the things that you offer. And more importantly, recently, the NSA and DHS also named the University of West Florida as the Cybersecurity Regional Resource Center for the Southeast U.S. So that's a huge honor as well as a huge responsibility in the sense that not only now do we want to maintain the quality and innovative programs that we have in cybersecurity, we want to help the rest of the Southeast region be able to develop quality cybersecurity programs and support their community in the same way that we do. So it's a great, I think, platform for Northwest Florida and the things that we're involved in the community to be able to showcase the great things that are already happening here. You look at the growth of private sector, you look at the growth in terms of our military presence here and their cybersecurity efforts continuing to grow. We want to continue to support that. Already, we see, looking at national data, that in our region, we have over 1,300 unfilled cybersecurity jobs right here in Northwest Florida, high paying, high demand jobs. And so we are on a mission to work with community partners to fill those jobs. And we're also outpacing the national average in cybersecurity job growth. Right here, the Panhandle is outpacing the national average. So not only are we in a great place, we're poised to be in an even better place. And what we want to do is continue to work with the community to make that happen and to really help Northwest Florida become a leader in cybersecurity.
When you talk about those 1,300 jobs, what type of jobs are those? I mean, what would somebody be doing? Is that a programmer or?
It could be. The good thing about cybersecurity is it's very multidisciplinary. So certainly a lot of those jobs are in kind of cyber programming and IT backgrounds or those types of skills. So it could be jobs as an information security analyst, where they're looking at kind of how to solve problems, how to kind of detect and defend against attacks. It could be computer and network security engineers, the people who are responsible for securing the network, for securing the system to protect against attacks. It could be intelligence analysts as well, who are looking at kind of being able to identify what could possibly be a threat and how do we know and how could we prevent that as well. So there's a variety of jobs. Many of them are technical in nature, IT, programming, computer science, heavy related, but some are also in policy. So we see a huge growth and need in terms of cyber law, cyber policy, as well as communications and other factors. So the approach that we've taken at UWF is really unique in the sense that we focus on multidisciplinary aspects of cybersecurity. So given that not just locally, 1,300 jobs nationally, we're looking at over 300,000 unfilled cybersecurity jobs right now. And estimates show that by the year 2019, we'll have a global deficit of over 3 million cybersecurity professionals. And so certainly what we've realized is we can't take a one-size-fits-all approach. We can't tell everybody we have one program and if you like to code, this is for you. Right. We want to make sure we have that option available, and certainly our cybersecurity program is part of our designation by NSA and DHS as a National Center of Academic Excellence. So students who complete that program, their transcripts and certificates will actually say this is an NSA DHS designated program. So that's kind of like the gold standard for employers, that they know they're getting quality in the graduates. But in addition to that, we recognize that students have a variety of interests. So they may be interested in management. So we have options in information security management through the College of Business. They may be interested in government. And so we have options in security and diplomacy through the Department of Government, and just various other options as well related to cybersecurity, so that the goal is we can tell students that no matter what you're interested in, there's a way for you to get some cybersecurity knowledge and skills, and there's a great job waiting for you when you finish. That's really the approach that we want and the message that we want to get across to students.
Lots of opportunities, the bottom line. Tell me about your relationship with IHMC, the Institute for Human and Machine Cognition, which is doing a lot of wonderful things in the area.
Yeah, IHMC has been a great collaborator and certainly a great steward for the community in terms of the things that they've done to advance research and knowledge in the area, but also the community support. So we work with them very closely on collaborative research and development, as well as trying to grow that knowledge base. So they're very actively interested in advancing their cybersecurity expertise. Of course, they're already a powerhouse in intelligent systems and as well as robotics. And so certainly we've worked with them to make sure that our students have pathways to work with them on research projects through internships. Many of our students our alum are now there, happy in positions at IHMC, but also to continue to advance the field, more importantly, to kind of build again that knowledge base right here in Northwest Florida. It's great to have them as a partner. So we're working on some things to be able to do more advanced cybersecurity research in partnership with them. We're also working on a collaborative Ph.D. in intelligent systems and robotics that'll be a joint program between the University of West Florida and IHMC, and it'll be a very unique program throughout the nation.
I have to ask you this, and I'd ask you this a little bit tongue-in-cheek, because they obviously are doing some awesome things with robotics, and we talk about artificial intelligence, and there's some people get a little frightened by that whole concept. What should we be?
I think that it's interesting to me, as somebody who's been in AI now for over 27 years involved in the field, to see that drama continues to live on. I think certainly there's risks in everything that we do, but I think if you look at kind of AI and robotics, I mean, they've really helped modernize our lives in so many ways, whether it's through the phone, our iPhone, and the capabilities that it provides, or Siri, some things that are as simple as that,
right,
to robots or to unmanned vehicles, right?
Yeah.
So there's everything in between. So I think, certainly we have to keep in mind that these systems are designed by people to help, right? To help solve problems, to help the world, to help in various ways. And so personally, I'm not too worried about the hype. I think it makes good for television and for entertainment.
Right.
But I think as long as we're kind of, just like in the rest of our practices, we always have ethical development. Even in cybersecurity, one of the first things we teach is ethics, right? And we continue to emphasize that because we know that we're students, in order to become good defenders, they're going to need to understand offensive strategies and how to be able to defend against them well. Well, it's the same in developing intelligent systems, right? You always start with what are the goals of this? What are the purpose? How will this help? And then you work your way back towards proper and effective design to incorporate that.
I have about 2 minutes left. As you look ahead over the next 5 years to the next decade, where do you see technology taking us? What are you most excited about?
I think I'm most excited about the connectivity that it's enabled, the communications and the barriers that it's broken down, because certainly looking at how far we've come as a community, as a society, as a globe in terms of sharing resources, I think that's going to continue to be huge, because certainly we look at cutting-edge technology such as AI or such as cybersecurity. What's really helped is the fact that we can collaborate, that we can share resources. Even within cybersecurity, we now have centers where we share information about vulnerabilities and threats. I think that's, to me, it's really kind of opened up that connected world, and that's going to open up even more revolutions as we see related to technology and the impact on society.
Interesting. This stuff's moving fast, isn't it? Very fast. Is it kind of the Moore's Law scenario? I mean, is it happening that fast?
I think it's very exciting. So it's great to be in a position where we have such great advances, and to be able to say that in 5 years from now we'll be in a totally different, even better world is fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you so very much. What a fascinating conversation.
Thank you so much for having me on. I've enjoyed it.
You bet. Wish you all the best of luck. Dr. Eman El-Sheikh from the University of West Florida. She is the director of the Center for Cybersecurity at UWF, as well as being a professor. By the way, you can see more of our conversations online at wsre.org/conversations, as well as on YouTube and Facebook. I'm Jeff Weeks. Thank you so very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. Take wonderful care of yourself. We'll see you soon.
Support for this program is provided in part by Gulf Power, a Southern company, and by viewers like you. Thank you.